Hi, I'm Michelle. This is my so-called handmade life. I have a blog by the same name, and I'm my so-called handmade life on Instagram, and I'm Mamatronic on Ravelry and Flickr. So it's been a while, I guess almost a month, about a month since I posted something. We had a loss. A friend of the family passed away, and it was just a really hard experience for some of my loved ones, and that's what we've been doing. The last episode I talked a little about the conversation about racism, that's been going on Instagram within the crafting community. And it's that larger conversation that's been happening for, ages, but it's really not been discussed among knitters, and how it shows up in just this little world that we all retreat into when we get home. People get home from work and they put on a podcast and they sit down and they knit, or they scroll through their Instagram when they have a free moment, and it's this little respite in our lives. But when there's obvious effects of racism there, it's not the relief and the safe, relaxing, homey place that it could be. So I talked a little about how I was viewing it in my life, and I wanted to make changes. And I downloaded Layla Afsad's book. I haven't gotten to look at it because of the things that came up. My attentions were just needed. My family needed me. But over the weeks, as I was thinking, my heart was heavy already about this racism. And things different friends of mine online who are people of color, things they said, just really saddened me. And I was feeling tenderhearted about it. And then this tragedy happens, and it took over my thought life. But something rose to the surface that really applies to both situations, and that is, we don't know how long we have around people. We need to make the most of every minute. Specifically, the words I say and the things I do have power to them, power to do good or bad. And the biggest thing that I've been aware of is that the words I don't say and the things I fail to do have just as much impact, or they can, for good or for bad. And I don't want to fail to say something or do something that would help somebody to feel welcomed at home, part of the group, or anything else. A friend online told me that at a knitting event, it touched them that I treated them like I would anyone else. She's not white. And I was just like, what? How else would I treat you? It took me by surprise. It was in a big city. I just didn't think how many times she might have not been treated like she belonged, or like she was just one of the group. It made me really sad. It bothered me. And she said that's why we're talking about it now. And that people have shared their personal stories of people mistreating them in stores, or following them around like they're going to steal because they don't look like the store owner, or they're a minority. And all of that's just horrible. But I have a role to play in paying attention to who's around me and what's happening to them. I mean, for all I know, I could have been at a checkout counter or something and not seen, because I'm in my own little world, the person next to me, how they're being treated. It really goes beyond racism. I mean, I'd like to be aware of the people around me. I don't think it's accidents that we're in each other's lives. Even if it's just a brief chance meeting, I want to make an impact, a good impact, be a blessing to people around me. So I've been thinking about that a lot. And it's crossed my mind should I say this? Should I do that? Not even, like I said, having to do with knitting or racism. And I think, no, I'm gonna say it and do it, because what if I don't get another chance? Or if there's any chance that this person feels in some way pushed to the side, I want to make sure they don't. So I want to say now, this is like a small podcast. I don't have some big, there's not a bunch of people watching it. My Ravelry group is such a sweet group, but it's a small group. And there are members that don't look just like me, that aren't white. But whoever you are, wherever you're from, I hope that you'll feel welcomed in that group and in the comment section here. Always. I don't want to be surrounded by people who are just like me or look just like me. I don't even need to be surrounded by people who think a lot like me. I mean, it helps if we relate similarly, or, we can find a way to relate to each other. And this is kind of a crafting podcast, so typically we have that in common. But maybe not always, and I don't have to have that in common. I like to meet new people, and I really care about making relationships with people. I really do. I want quality friendships, even if it's just, the most light of friendships that you can have, on an Instagram type forum. I want it to be quality. So if you've ever felt like, there's just no place for me online with these podcasts and these, whatever on Instagram. And I really feel like I feel silly saying this. This is like last week. I feel silly saying it because I'm kind of a nobody online, but not completely. I mean, if I can make a difference in somebody's life, that's something. And so please take a chance on me, on this podcast, on our Ravelry group. Also, I think I might go. I don't know yet. We have to get our flooring changed. So it's late effects of the hurricane that happened and the flooding. So I may not do DFW Fiber Fest. But if I do, and if you're going to be there, let me know. Message me. I've heard that some people who are, people of color don't always feel comfortable at those events. They think, it's mostly white women. And when I look back, it probably mostly was. At the one time I went to DFW Fiber Fest. So if you're wanting someone to walk around with, take a chance and ask me. I mean, the worst that can happen is I'm boring and you don't want to walk around with me. Say, I gotta go. That's fine. But message me on Ravelry or Instagram and let me know if you think you'll be going. Maybe we can meet up at least. I saw Christy Glass's This Is Us episode and I liked it. I don't know, a lot of people were upset with her, and so when they saw that episode they may not have liked it. I don't know. I didn't read all the comments. I just and I only watched it like a few days ago, but I really liked it. I liked the sense of hopefulness that, it's getting better, it will get better. The concept of, the idea of racism in our country or wherever, but they're all here in the U.S. I noticed something Felicia said. She said that when she was young, all of her friends looked like her. But now, the next generation, her children, they have very diverse friend groups, and all of the friends, their families get along. They're all like family. And I thought that is a lot how it's been here in my home. It wasn't diverse when I was young. Our school was not diverse. I think that I had 2 Vietnamese friends, 3, but that were girls too. And they were always partnering together. And I thought they were great friends, and that's why. And one day one of them said, we're not that close. It's just that everybody assumes we'll be partnered together, and so we always do. And of course, neither of them felt comfortable saying, hey, I want to partner with someone different today. and maybe they would be fear they would be rejected. Of course, she wouldn't have been, and we did partner on things after that. But I always thought they were good friends, and that's why they stuck together. That they wanted to always be together. But it might not have always been the case. And I do remember that my other friend, who was Vietnamese, we had a debate we had to do, and the topics were assigned to us. So my position was not one I chose. It wasn't a very good position. It wasn't strong. And at that time, our family was going through a lot, and my mom was really sick, and I just really didn't think, like, I was not sleeping well, and I just didn't do well. I don't think I did well. I knew when I went up for this debate, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible, because I wasn't very prepared. My supports were weak. But I won the debate, and I was so embarrassed because I knew I probably won. Well, first of all, I was a little more outgoing, maybe, but that's not why. I felt like it was because I was white, and the people voting were white. They were other kids, and her position was stronger to start with, and her work was better. I didn't say anything because what if I was wrong? Why would I want to put that idea in someone's head? How awful would that be? And if it hadn't occurred to her, I didn't want it to, though it probably did occur to her looking back. But I remember being ashamed about that. So that was the experience of diversity in my school. It was like just 3 or 4 Vietnamese children. And now it's much more diverse, and my children have friends from lots of different backgrounds, and one of my children has 2 very close friends that are not white, and I love that we're growing up. We're growing out of that. This area is, but it's still a problem. So I was listening to the news, and Eddie Glaude Jr. was on talking about this politician who has appeared in blackface, and they say, well, it was a long time ago, but then the way he talked about it currently was just very strange and not broken. Like, he was not broken about, it didn't seem broken about what he had done or ashamed. And so anyway, I'm only bringing that up to say that this quote was interesting. If I can find it. Eddie Glaude Jr., I didn't know who he was. He was just on the news panel. He's a Princeton professor, I think, and he's a black man. And he said that the reason this man did this and felt okay about it was that he doesn't have black people in his everyday life. If he did, he would know this isn't okay. He wouldn't have felt okay about it, but it's because he was in his own little segregated world. He said many of us, himself included, and it's beyond parties and it's beyond color, everyone, many of us go home each day to an insular community of sameness. We don't share or coexist in social situations. There's a deep, profound segregation to this. How can we represent each other and see to our neighbors' best interests if we know so little about them, their beliefs, their concerns, their wounds, their needs? He said, we are mysteries to one another. And I thought that was a really good way of saying it, very poetic. We are mysteries to one another. And so, though I would never, ever mistreat a person or shy away from someone because they look different from me, I don't always think about inserting myself on someone's behalf because they might feel uncomfortable approaching me, or they might assume I think like somebody else they know. And you can say, well, you've got to live your life. You can't always be worrying about what other people think, but to some degree we can. And I had a discussion with my son, who is now in college, and it's a diverse campus, and he's really pretty introverted. Like, he could be happy just sitting, listening to music and eating by himself, but we're like trying to encourage him to meet new people. And it's a great chance to meet people you didn't just grow up with in school. Though his school is more diverse, it's not that diverse. It's really not. And I said, now don't forget, the things I'd been telling him on that I've been reading on Instagram, if you're in the majority, and in the last few generations, your majority, like white people, have looked down upon black people. He knows a lot. He knows people who do. He's heard them talk before. He's seen it because we live in the South. And I said, because of where you are, I mean, who should that burden of reaching out first be on? And that might be a debatable point to you, but he said, it should be on me. He said, because in general, probably they've been hurt by white people and would be less likely to try to reach out. Kind of like my friend would be less likely to venture and say, hey, will you work with me? Instead of always assuming I'm going to work with someone who's the same ethnicity as I am. It's just really hard for someone to do that. And after reading those stories on Instagram, that's a lot to deal with all the time. And then what, I'm going to take another chance on someone who hasn't made clear if they'll accept me or not. So anyway, I was really proud that he felt like he could be that person to reach out. I mean, I hope he will. I don't think he would hesitate over skin color. I think he might hesitate over just introversion and shyness. But mercy and kindness, like just wanting to be kind and make someone, and when I say mercy, I mean like it's an act of mercy to make sure that people around you feel welcomed. To be hospitable is a kind, everyday kind of kindness and mercy, and that can beat our fears and anxieties in social situations. It does for me. It makes me come out of my shell at the idea that, oh, that person's sitting alone or whatever, and that's not always had to do with race. It could be about anything. So anyway, that was just some thoughts I had this week about that. A lot of you have been thinking about it and heartbroken reading the things you saw on Instagram too. And one of you mentioned journaling your thoughts every day, and maybe every evening or every morning, and you've been looking for things in yourself that have to do with this racism and white privilege and things you can do about it to make a difference. And I really appreciated reading that. Because of all the talk and the highlighting of people of color in their, I say people of color for everyone non-white, but I don't know if that's really the proper way to say it, because everybody's saying Black, Indigenous, people of color. So that's what I mean though when I say that. But I'm seeing people or meeting them, there are a lot of people, especially if they're fairly influential or they have a business. I think they're getting lots and lots of new followers, so they're not actually meeting me, but I'm meeting them. And some people just I'm seeing because of hashtags like diversity that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. So like I would buy from anyone if I thought they had a good product, and I like to eventually try and purchase things if I was going to purchase it, especially from my Instagram friends when I can, like spread it around, different dyers and things. But I would have been interested in all these people's feeds. I've never decided whether or not I'm going to friend someone based on their skin color or even really their craft. I mean, I'm interested in lots of things besides knitting, but I just wouldn't have met some of the people I've learned of. So one is the Quirky Monday podcast by Kalisha. I love her podcast. She's always got some projects going. She does a lot of crochet, which is kind of good for me because I've only done a little bit of crochet, but I want to do more. So it'll be inspiring. I don't know that I'll get around to much crochet this year other than a granny stripe blanket, but it's all good. It's crafting, Anyway, I would have watched her podcast before all this came up, but I don't know if I ever would have heard about her because I'm not somebody who watches what YouTube or Instagram or anyone suggests for me. I'm completely sick of Instagram every 5 images is a bra commercial or something. I'm so tired of that. Pinterest, their suggestions, they make me mad. I'll never click through them, ever. I mean, does anyone even use Pinterest anymore? It's so ridiculous in advertising. So, you know, Instagram is so commercial, and I have problems with it now. I don't enjoy it like I used to. I find it stressful, and I don't mean because of this conversation, just because it's, you know, I watch Netflix to not watch commercials. I don't like that. And it's just commerce driven. And some of the point of this conversation has been that it's been driving commerce toward white business owners, women in the knitting community. So I've learned of some new dyers because of this, and I would have bought from Brooke Fully Spun anyway. But it was exciting to see her stuff, and also because she still had some Christmas stuff, and I really wanted to make, one of my goals this year is to make a stocking for every member of my family, and I know I'm going to have to get on that after this, at least after the spring. By summer, I've got to be rolling on these stockings because there's going to be 5 of them. And then I might even do no, I'm not going to do dogs and cats. They can use our old stockings. So what I found was, this is Aran and worsted vintage Christmas colorway. It's really cute. It is those vintage colors. It makes me think of my grandmother's 60s style ornaments and Christmas lights and decorations. I also got a skein on fingering, and now it has a different look. It is the same colors, but the green looks slightly different. This actually looks more like a true Christmas green, and it makes me think of the colors of my mom's Christmas decorations in the 70s, so it's kind of neat. My mom's Christmas, my grandmother's Christmas. This is going to be Christmas socks for me or somebody. Or just socks in general. These will be for colorwork stockings. I want to do the contrasting traditional Fair Isle parts of the colorwork in this, and then I'll use something, a more affordable yarn for the like a cheap yarn of some sort, maybe in my stash, that could be the rest of the stocking. And I'm thinking with 2 skeins I could probably get contrasting color work in 2 or 3, depending on how ornate they are. It might just be a stripe of this with other striping colors, or maybe some traditional designs, colorwork motifs. So I was excited about that. Brooke is, her Instagram name is I Am Fully Spun. So this is her Cuppa colorway, and I was kind of bummed out. I got this and I really liked it. When I got it, I couldn't get, she had like 2 extra skeins of this, and I really wanted 2 skeins to do a some kind of color work, kind of like I'm doing on Guthrie. I'm using a couple of skeins of Spin Cycle, and that's a pricier hand-dyed yarn, so I'm using, the background color is a more affordable yarn for me. It's a cheap yarn, but the same yarn type, fiber type. Well, she had one of these. I got one, but then I saw those other 2 were still in her shop, and I was like, oh, as soon as my budget turns over and I have a little spending money, I'm gonna get them. But somebody got them. But that's good for her. Anyway, that's a new shop for me to buy from, and I don't need to be buying more yarn. That's a resolution. It wasn't last year, but I think it needs to be this year. So we talked a lot about goals. Oh, well, let me just say this. As far as yarn goes, a lot of people are talking about part of being inclusive in the knitting community is making things affordable for people who can't afford hand dyers. Like, this was not a bad price. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was not, like, there are certain hand dyers that are very expensive. Like, I couldn't do it. Plus, if they're overseas, the shipping is just too much for me. This was not especially for this hand spun look. It's really not. This is a good price. However, a lot of people can't even afford to do this at times. So Carolyn Dick on Instagram, she's Electric Tree on Instagram. She had several really good posts that were informative to me. First of all, about First Nations people and what it was like, what it's like on the reservation. I didn't know a lot about their history in Canada. I know our just grotesque history in the States toward Native Americans, and so I'm sure it's pretty much the same. She's had some interesting things to say, and I can't remember all the different posts of hers that I saw it on, but she's talked about different ways that you can help people and be inclusive, that you can help people who are struggling in poverty. And one of her patterns, right, she's actually from this point forward said that it will be, all the proceeds will go to a specific charity, and let me find it here. Grotine is the name of it. I think I'm saying it right. I got it. It's maybe a one skein shawl, which is an affordable option for someone. But you could make it bigger. I have a feeling it's something that can be modified to make larger if you want it to be larger. And it's it looks like well, it's just neat. It's good for variegated yarns. I'm seeing a lot of variegated projects with it, but you could use anything with it. Anyway, 100% of the proceeds go directly to True North Aid. It's a Canadian charity committed to serving Northern Indigenous communities in Canada with practical humanitarian support. Okay, so it's linen stitch bias shawl, and it works well with hand-painted yarns. So anyway, that is something, you know, she's offering that all the proceeds go directly to a good cause, but it lets you know of another cause if you're interested in knowing where to put your concern for others financially. So you can help other businesses, and you can spread the word, repost, and then things like this group organization. So Carolyn had a lot of other things to say online about inclusivity, and that if we want to really make things inclusive for everyone, then things like designers could design some one skein shawls or two skein, not shawl, just shawls, but two skein projects, because right now a lot of the big projects are taking more and more and more yarn. And even when you get to affordable yarn, that's quite a bit. It's pretty expensive. And she had suggestions for yarn buyers. When you're buying, say you're at a fiber show, leave some of the lower price things for people who really need them. Go ahead and pay full price. You're giving someone's business help. You're also, if you have the money, you could do that. Don't always worry about a sale and a good deal. I thought that was good to say. I like sales and I like good deals, but like, I know, you know, sometimes there's giveaways, and sometimes I enter giveaways just to promote it, and sometimes I like it and I want to do it, but sometimes I don't, just because I'm like, I have enough. I want someone else to win, especially if I win something. You know, every once in a while I'll win something and I'm like, okay, I don't need to do a bunch of giveaways for a while. That attitude applied to when you're shopping at a yarn store or like a fiber event especially. And to make fiber events more affordable for people. She also had suggestions for dyers that they could look for more affordable bases and offer a line that's not quite as expensive for people that are struggling. I thought those were really good ideas. Carolyn is the designer. Several months ago, I had an episode where I talked about an issue of Knit Scene with 90s inspired sweaters and things in it. And I liked all of them, and I showed you a bunch of them. Hers was Aberdeen, so that's kind of a tribute, I think, to Kurt Cobain. And it looks like the striping of it and the sleeves, it looks like his, maybe his blue and red sweater he wore. But anyway, it's a great pattern. I want to knit that pattern. I have some fuzzy yarn, and that would make it extra kind of 90s to me if I did it in that. I don't know if I have enough for it, but something like that. So she's a good designer, and just look at her Instagram. I'll have a link to the post. Most of you have probably already read it, but if you haven't, I found it food for thought, definitely. So a lot of people have been talking, since not just her post, other people's, about how to make things inclusive, and a lot of complaints I think have come to podcasters, not me because I'm not a big deal, but like people with major followings, like say Amy of Stranded Podcast. People have talked about how, you know, you show yarns that are so expensive, they're so out of our reach and all. Obviously people have to, they you know, this is their podcast, they're just showing their life, it's for fun, and they're sharing it with people, and they're going to use whatever they want to use, yarn-wise. But as far as designers, including versions and lower priced yarn, I remember when Holla Knits, when that was still going, Allison would have a hand-dyed yarn version and then a more maybe affordable solid colored version, or a not an indie dyer. She tried to show different yarns. She had all different body types and modeling the samples, and you know, often there were variations too in each pattern. I thought that was really kind of cool and ahead of its time. So saying that, a lot of people have been posting on their podcast ways to make knitting a little more affordable. When you're seeing all this beautiful, expensive stuff, what do you do with it? And I liked Amy's, it was her podcast number like 125, I think. I liked her suggestions. I would add something to that. One thing I do to make it work is, say if I'm doing a striped sweater, one stripe might be, like I was going to do with this, on those Christmas stockings. So I was going to use regular sock patterns or stocking patterns and just do striping in this or contrasting color work. So you can use one fairly expensive yarn with budget yarn, as long as they're the same fiber type. That works. Another thing is holding two together. So Amy makes a point of fingering weight goes a long way. There's so much more yardage in a 100 gram skein. You could get a hand-dyed or a little more pricey fingering weight yarn and hold it with a sport weight, more affordable brand, and you can get a marled effect or a slightly heathered look if the independent yarn is a indie dyed yarn is like thinner, you know, it won't be quite marled, but a little bit. It'll just change the texture and the color, and that's very interesting. I've seen people do it, and I've done it. Take two yarns and hold them together to create a marled look, rather than buying a more expensive yarn line that has a marled line. I often use brands like Patons, or Patons has a good marled line actually, in bulky and in worsted. I use Cascade, Wool of the Andes, and Cloudborn is Craftsy. It's kind of their exclusive line. They're often on sale for a good price. West Yorkshire Spinners is something Amy mentioned, and I see it on webs a lot on sale, and I've heard it's a good yarn. I haven't actually used it though. Also, I knit accessories, and when I didn't, like, I'm at a point in my life where I can afford yarn more than I could 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and definitely not 10 or 15 years ago. Just my kids are grown, but are pretty much grown. I used indie yarn for accessories because I could wear them all the time. They're often seen, and I wouldn't wear really bold variegated colors maybe on a sweater, but I would on a hat or socks or something like that. So it gave me a lot to knit with for a small price, and also it was a small object. So so a lot of she had another tip that I do all the time. When you go to a pattern and you really like it, but you see that the recommended yarn is out of your budget, click on the other yarn ideas tabs. I think it's Yarn Ideas. And it will show you all the projects being done and different yarns they have used. And by doing that, like you remember, I wanted to knit a night shift shawl this year. And so I found some yarn. I bought Spin Cycle for Guthrie. I think it was 3 skeins. That was that. I couldn't do more. But when I saw the night shift shawl, I was like, oh man, that Spin Cycle looks really good. But I didn't really know where you could get yarn similar to that was maybe a little more affordable. It's not going to be the same colorways. Spin Cycle is pretty special, but I saw Stonehedge Yarns has crazy skeins, and it's a little more variegated. Like the color changes a little more wildly through the skein, but that paired with, say, Knit Picks Chroma Twist Bulky, which is still being sold, it is an accessory. It's okay if one yarn is worsted and the other is bulky. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of thing. Well, then I see that Shifty sweater pattern just came out, and it calls for quite a bit of yarn. I can't do the sample yarn. I can't do that. I don't think I should do that. So what I can do, I looked under other yarns people were using, and I found this Aran Tarantella yarn. And you can see it's a varied in color, but it's very uniform through the whole thing. And I found it in D-Stash on Ravelry. So for, say, $10, I got 2 skeins. I think a tiny bit of this one was used. And now I only really needed 1 for this. I need a few for 2 or 3, I think, for the main. This is also fingering weight, so I'm actually going to be winging it and knitting up a size, or down a size, up a size, so that my fingering weight yarn will work like the sport weight that is required for Shifty. But I think that will work for me. I never really have problems when I just change the size I'm knitting due to a different size yarn. On, I think, Amazon, I found enough of one color to be my main color, and then this, and then another person's D-Stash. So I'm paying for shipping on these D-Stashed ones, and that makes it not quite as affordable, but each D-Stashed thing is a lot of more than 1 skein. So these are $5 each. That's really not bad. I mean, this could be for another project of some sort, a shawl or something, or a cowl. So that's another way that you can kind of make things affordable. And you'll see, I mean, I use affordable yarns a lot. In fact, Amy's commercial cowl, I entered like 3 things in it. Cascade, patterns, stuff like that. I'm talking about affordable yarns, and now I'm going to show you a rose cardigan kit. That's another one of those giant kits. It takes a lot of skeins to make it, because the rose cardigan is such an oversized sweater, and if you're making larger than the smallest size, it's really oversized. Well, I asked for this for Christmas. This is like a Christmas birthday from my husband, because it didn't come on Christmas. It actually came by my birthday. But you start with Sweet Pea. This is from Sweet Sparrow Yarns. So Julie of Sweet Sparrow Yarns has the most beautiful rose cardigan kit I saw. And I really didn't even think I would buy a rose cardigan kit. I figured that's a lot of yarn, I can't do that. And I was thinking of a way to make it work using things I had in stash, holding 2 things together, that kind of thing, to try and kind of make them fade into each other. But my husband wanted to do something like this for my Christmas gift. So Sweet Pea is the first color. It starts in the back, and then there's Lumina, which is a slight color variation. You see it's getting darker slowly. It'll move on Lumina on either side, you know, coming down each arm. And then Alma, which Alma has some really great 70s green little speckles here and there in it. I love that. And then it ends at the arms, the cuffs, and the ribbed bottom with moss time. This is my very favorite one. I love these little bits of kind of a brown and a sort of purple. It's really pretty. So I feel bad saying this. I don't want to encourage anyone not to just buy the kit for them. If you've got the money for a rose cardigan kit, do it. Get it from Sweet Sparrow Yarns, because this is beautiful sport weight yarn. But what I did so that this would be in my budget, this isn't something I normally do, a big kit like this. What I did was, I'm going to knit down a size because some friends online did it and it worked for them. I'm knitting down a size, but I got one extra skein, not in the kit. This is the smallest kit that she has. It wouldn't normally be my size, but I'm knitting down a size, and I got an extra skein of the center back color, which is Sweet Pea. Now, it's not in the same yarn base. It's similar quality, but it's fingering, so I would actually have to double my strand. But I've got to really sit down and look at the rose cardigan pattern, but if I feel like I need more width around, I can put this in, because held double, this will still give me, 230 more yards, and then I've got my size for sure. So, and I won't be bothered by the slight difference, and I won't be bothered by one being held double and one not. And this is 80-20, this is 75-25, so there's a slight fiber difference, but they're both superwash. Now, you might think, well, that's kind of jinky to do. Maybe it is, but it's the only way I could do a rose cardigan kit, and I wanted to do it and make it within my budget. I mean, if I'd asked my husband, maybe he would have done it, but he shouldn't have done it. We didn't need to do that, so I have to put on the brakes. You know what I mean? Sometimes I have to be the one. By the way, do you like what I'm wearing? This is my capsule cardigan by Shannon Cook that I test knit, and you saw me working on it. I showed you a little bit, at least in the last episode. Great pockets, super cute, fits great. I did a 34. I thought, well, I can always block it out too, because as I was knitting on it, I started thinking, well, maybe I should have made it more oversized. I want it to be kind of an oversized cardigan, even though it's open. But there's plenty of room, and I could still block it. Now I'm gonna have to take it off, guys, because I'm sweating like a pig. I'm glad I put it on, though. I might have forgotten to show you if I weren't sweating. It's winter. It's winter in Southeast Texas, everyone. Anyway, this is just a great texture. I loved this stitch. I loved every second of working on this. I didn't mind even sewing in pockets. I didn't mind even weaving in ends. That is how useful this is. And speaking of affordable yarns, I think everyone would agree this is well knit. I mean, not well knit, like, good job, Michelle. This is a well-designed pattern. It's a classic shape, but it's interesting stitches, interesting way of doing a pocket, and a good modern fit with an open front. Very wearable. I see me wearing this over a little vintage dress, like I'm living on the farm, sitting on the front porch. This is a very affordable yarn. It is Patton's Classic Wool in the Natural Mix colorway. It's really got a pretty variance in it. It's a heathered look, and at moments it looks kind of pink and kind of brown. It's a nice affordable yarn. So I just thought I would mention that to you guys. I may have a drink of my tea. Let's see if I had another tip on saving. Oh, I also thought, I'm not going to be buying as much yarn this year. That's one of my goals, because I don't need to. I did not have the knitting time I thought I would this year. Of course, I cannot imagine that more things like have happened this year would happen to slow me down, but in 2019. But also, I mean, I just don't need extra stuff. But the fact that I can even go buy yarn I don't need immediately is a luxury. It is also because of the place I'm at in my life. It wasn't like that when I first started knitting. When I first started knitting, it was like I could take something at a thrift store and unwind it, you know, rip it back and use that yarn. That's the stage I was at. I went to the craft store, Joann's, and I would buy whatever I could afford, and it was usually Lion brand, and I loved those sweaters. I would still be wearing them if they were not too small for me now. But, well, not all of them are. One isn't. But I do appreciate when designers have things knit up in other yarns. Like the desire to keep your stuff, just like I'm sure podcasters feel it, keep your podcast at the top of everyone's queue with lots of likes and favorites, is to knit the newest pattern in the newest yarn. And it's the self-sustaining world where everybody's churning out patterns designed for these yarns with the yarn support, and the yarn dyer is supporting these patterns so that their yarn will get out there and they will sell more. And then it trickles down to little old me knitters who are just, I'm gonna knit this, we all get excited and we want to knit this new cool thing we see. I'm not really meaning that, but a feeling like I have to knit the newest pattern in this thing, or you don't get much recognition online. I don't know. Do people care about that? If they don't have a business, do they really care about that? I don't know. I don't care about that on this podcast. In fact, this year I want to knit some old patterns out of old pattern books. But I can say that I appreciate back in the day when you just used whatever you had, and it really felt kind of revolutionary to say, I'm not going to go to the store and buy that. I'm going to make it myself, and I'm going to do it cheaper. I like that. I miss that, actually. I miss doing it, but I actually still do it quite a bit, which you're going to see. I still use affordable yarns a lot. I mean, this sweater, it wasn't just Patton's Classic. It was Patton's Classic bought with a 40% off coupon at Joann. Do you know what I mean? It was like already budget yarn, 40% off. I do that a lot. And I'll use it. I'll wear this forever. But I just miss that feeling of beating the system. We're going to make it ourselves. It's getting lost in commerce on Instagram for me. It is. I miss just people making stuff like the way it was when I first was on Ravelry, just looking at people were making. And honestly, if you could use an affordable yarn and make something that looked great, you were smarter for it. To me, I found I admired that. So having said that, Jane Richmond, came out with Winston. I'm sure you've seen it, but I'm going to show you anyway, in case. Jane has put out a lot of patterns that were in doable yarns, affordable yarns. So that's her Winston. It's got a bit of a self-striping effect. She actually used, I think, this colorway, Fossil. This is a Lion brand, Thick and Quick colorway. I think she actually used this colorway. I didn't get it to knit Winston, though. I do want to make Winston. So I got a Joann coupon on my birthday, and I went to use it. I don't think I was able to, though, because they had an even better sale on. Buy 2 skeins of yarn, get 1 free. So I bought Big Twist, which is new to me. Look, these are falling apart. I've tried to do this twice. I just keep holding them up, and every time I try to make this episode. I wanted to make a striping Winston with these 2 colors. So I thought that would be cool. I thought they would look good together. I don't see the color names here, but anyway, I am so excited about making a sweater I don't have to feel super delicate and careful of, you know. I love the idea of this rose cardigan. I'm gonna love wearing it, but I might also feel like I have to walk around all like, don't touch me, you have food on your hands, you know. I want everyone to stay away from me. I'm not gonna care about this because I can sweat in it. I can wear it outside when we're camping, and I just don't have to worry about little flakes of stuff getting on it or not being able to wash it because it's washable. I would still block it and hand wash, but it's fairly rugged. So that's another, you know, it's the thing I miss doing. I miss seeing more people doing that, and I appreciate that Jane still does patterns like that. And a lot of people have knitted in these yarns and it looks good. That's really all I had to say about accessibility and affordable yarns. Not that you needed to hear my take on it, but I just thought, well, it's worth mentioning, you know, a few of these ideas and brands. And not only that, but just let's remember what it felt like when we first learned to knit. How we felt like we were kind of beating a system, and now we're getting so caught up in that same system that it could suck the joy out of it, and I don't want that to happen. Okay, so speaking of super bulky knits, one of the prompts for Fiber Uary Challenge that I'm doing on Instagram, I'm taking part in it, I'm not hosting it, is fingering or bulky weight. And I chose bulky. I do both, but I love bulky weight patterns. And one that I just had to cast on because I saw one of our group members, Sarah Jane Strathcona. This is Strathcona. Nope. Let's see. I hope that's coming out clear for you. It's a super bulky cropped sweater with 3/4 length sleeves, a little oversized, and a bit of a mock turtleneck there. I had to cast it on. So when I went to Joann and got this yarn on sale, okay, well, let me show you this. This is my yarn for Strathcona. It's not from Joann, actually. It's something I got. It was discontinued and super cheap online. This is all kind of crunched together, so it looks really small, but I think it's going to fit me fine when it's on me. Plus, I've got to save room for blocking. I am using a slightly tighter gauge than the pattern calls for, so I might actually could enter this in the Wing It Cal, which is a knit along I'm hosting, where we just kind of wing a project. Like, we can use a pattern and just change one simple thing in it. Maybe your cast on, or for me, I'm changing the gauge, so I'm going to have to knit it a longer and knit my raglan increases, put more increases in there. That's winging it. That's changing and modifying something, just using the little skills you've learned here and there as a knitter. So this is some drops yarn that is 100% wool. It was very affordable. I just dug and dug online. I probably bought it on eBay, actually. I wanted to make some of Tara Lynn Morrison's patterns. I test knitted some of her patterns years ago, and I've knit some. But what always happens is, I often don't have a super bulky yarn that I like. Well, you know, these colors are really pretty nice out of Joann, you know, but used to get colors that I liked, I would have to really drop a dime for that, and I couldn't, especially when I was test knitting a few of them. So I could now look around, and there's a lot of options, and I found that color. I really like it. I want to knit a couple of her things. I also want to do Musoni is another sweater, similar in style, but a true turtleneck. Don't know if I'll do it because it's really warm here. Let me show you this cowl. I think I'm going to use the Fossil colorway that I showed you. So this is a very affordable Lion brand, Thick and Quick. I think I'm going to use it for this Durand cowl of hers. It's just a fringed cowl. I think that's what I'm going to use this for. And then I want to make another one of her sweaters too eventually. It might be Kingston, or it might be the Musoni. also at Joann, I got, oh, is it here? Well, my dog's yawning. I got some, it's more thick and quick. It's similar to this, but it's just a burgundy tweed. I don't have it by me. I'm not going to get up to knit this. It's called Mary. I can't think of who designed this. It is, I think, Joanna Hatala. And it's a big, super bulky garter stitch, it looks like, sweater. And it just looks like fun to make. And so I think I have enough of that. I had a little bit that I got a long time ago on sale, and the colors still matched, and so I added some from the other day. So anyway, that's my big Joann yarn haul. And I'm so looking forward to using larger needles after knitting quite a few fingering weight projects this last year. I do love to go back to bulky weight. All right. So your goals for this year. I'm just going to read out some of the goals you said you had. It's kind of been collecting over a few weeks, so if I leave someone out, I'm sorry. Melanie, Braid and Tinker podcast, she is going to use stash. And she said, it's not just for insulation, you know. Funny, that's true. Yeah, my husband liked that comment. And she's going to make more socks. I'm going to do that too. I'm going to use my sock yarn, and I think I want to make some as Christmas gifts this year. We'll see. I'm not into stressing out over Christmas ever again, but I would like to do that. Anne Marie said that she wants to work through stash, finish up her whips, and work through her queue. So she's just going to clean things up, basically. Use what she's got. That's always wise, right? Brooke wants to look through Nora Gann's Cable Source book, her Japanese Stitch Bible, and some different stranded motifs, and maybe come up with a design, a sweater design with that. That would be her first color work to do. So good luck, Brooke. You're going to love it, and you're going to probably find that it's pretty easy to do. It looks intimidating, but it's not. Kathy had this goal, she's had it for years, of designing her own sweater without using a pattern at all, and she's finally doing it in our Wing It cowl. So I'll show you, if I put in photos when I show the Wing It cowl projects, I will show you her sweater. Frau Kate is going to use her budget to help her pick her projects for the year, and that's kind of a goal. With a child going off to college, you know, she's just wanting to use what she's got on hand more than buy new things. So fabric stash, yarn stash, making up scrappy projects as she goes. I mean, where is it? You know, things like Frauke made this bag. This is a scrappy project. This is a great way to use fabric leftovers, you know, and yarn leftovers. Really smart. I don't know that that's the kind of thing she's going to do, but lots of scrappy projects. Just trying to use what she has when she can. Sarah Jane wants to sew a lot, really work on making her wardrobe by sewing. She wants to make socks for everyone in her family. Maybe selling, well, I think she's already decided since she wrote this. She's going to be opening her shop back up. I didn't know that she had a shop where she sold bags. She's opening it back up. She has some really cute project bags. I'll put a link. I hope I remember to put a link in the notes. And maybe hand-dyed yarn. She's also wanting to do a veggie garden with her kids and work on some personal things like conquering fears. She recommended the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, saying that it encourages you to kind of look at everything you do as creative potential and to intuitively do it, to be creative. I've heard Big Magic's really good. It's good for getting you motivated to just go make something, do something, or see what you're already doing in a new light. And I did get it. It was like $1.99 at New Year's. So I did get it. I haven't started it yet. But she's also wanting to, oh, I told you. Yeah. Tackle some inner fears. That's one of those real goals. Like, knitting goals are goals for sure, but like personal self-betterment, those are the ones, you know, they're the hard ones, the ones that matter. I had that goal last year of setting aside some bitterness about some things that it would creep back up on me. It might be months, but then all of a sudden it would just jump on me and I'd be sick at my stomach thinking about it. And I really wanted, it's like, I have to be able to outgrow this and get over this one day. I wanted 2018 to be the year. I didn't really expect that to happen. It did happen. I think it happened. I think I got the key to how to do it in October of that year, actually. It's just right at the end. But it had to do, well, I'll tell you later. Well, I'll tell you now. It had to do with the way I pray, the way I approach God in prayer, just a different mindset. Things I've heard all my life thought I was doing, but I really wasn't calling him by name, acknowledging who he was. It's like you hear the term praising him. He inhabits the praise of his people. I'm not verbally that way so much. And I just noticed it about myself when I was going through all that stuff in the hospital with my dad and prayed that way. And I just felt it was just something different happened inside of me. There's no way to explain it. I just know that when I pray about that issue of bitterness, whatever's bothering me, I don't feel sick anymore. And it doesn't hound me for days or weeks. It's really like gone. And I'm not saying I haven't felt it again or that I never will again, but it's like the ability to shrug it off, to just knock it like a fly away from me, it's there. I didn't have that ability a year ago, so I didn't expect that. I should have, but I didn't. So anyway, those kind of goals are hard. And then setting them like it's all going to happen in exactly a 12-month period, who's to say it would? But it's a really great thing for us to note things inside of ourselves. And I think it's great, Sarah Jane, that you're challenging yourself that way. You know, that you're being self-aware like that. In the same way, Jen wanted to get back into good physical condition. She's a very active person, but hadn't been maybe as active recently. Didn't feel like her health was as good as it could be. And so she started this new program and she needed her why, like her motivation. And she realized she hasn't been happy since her father passed away and she needs to regain that joy in life. And so that is her reason. And so that's really insightful and to acknowledge. Doesn't that seem so obvious that we know when we're not really happy? But no, we can go for months or years even, and one day just realize I haven't really been that happy. I'm not really loving the way I'm living. And the answer isn't always things getting easier and having what you want. Sometimes it's like loss. You can't fix that. You can't have that back anytime soon. So yeah, it's a noble, difficult goal, but I think you can I know you can meet your physical goals, Jen. So if that takes you there, I hope it does. I hope that you regain that joy. Adina wants to try, this is almost from beginning to end project. She's not going to raise the sheep and shear them, but after that, she's going to botanically dye some white fin fiber, spin it, then knit it. And I think that's really cool. That's really super crafty. She also wants to mingle more with people in her community. I think they're fairly new there. And so she just hasn't really gotten out there as much as she wanted to. Oh, I also left off Jen's going to be knitting Lisa Simonson's Mystery Afghan patterns. Lots of socks, and doing the Yarn Hoarders Dishcloth Challenge. Have you guys heard of that? I haven't. I haven't even gotten to look it up since she left that comment, but it sounds really interesting. It sounds like something right up my alley. She also wants to finish her Phoenix and Guthrie, and probably since she wrote that, she has, because she's a sweater machine. Regina is also working on some personal things. She's working on getting over just some fears and letting go of things she just can't fix on her own. It's just not something she can do. Just kind of finding her way. We go through these new seasons in our lives, and things change. Like certain things that are our responsibility suddenly aren't. You know, I'm at a new place with my children both being adults. One is it's college, but then he's living with us when he's not in school. So I'm not completely empty nest, but it feels a lot like that, and my responsibility in their life has changed. I have to back off some, and then in some ways, there's more of a place for me in their lives. So just navigating these changes. Best of luck to you, Regina. I hope that this year you find your footing in that, and just a great sense of peace about all of it. And she accidentally reached all of her knitting goals. She told me you can set up, track your goals for the year on Ravelry. I didn't know you could do that on your page, so that's cool. I still haven't done it, but she met all of hers by chance. She'd forgotten she even wrote them or set them out, laid out her goals on Ravelry. Anna has a lot of goals. She's going to, and a lot of them involve other people in a neat way. She's going to finish a blanket that her grandmother started for a grandchild but couldn't finish because she passed away. So she's going to finish it and gift it to the grandchild. She's going to complete a sweater that's half finished that she got from a family friend. Without a pattern, she's just going to have to match the rest of the sweater and give it to another relative. She's going to finish a crochet blanket quilt topper, knit a sweater for herself for Christmas, try to knit a couple of more sweaters for herself, but then do 3 pairs of socks, knit the swallowtail shawl and some Barocco alpaca, finish 8 more panels for a counterpane for her parents, and then a couple of gifts for friends, some socks and fingerless gloves. So that's a lot of gift giving. Blankets for other people is a very loving act to make. That's very sacrificial to knit a blanket for somebody. PJK said that her goal is to create from her stash and consume what she already owns. So more of that very economical and wise thinking. Keep telling me, guys, I want it to rub off on me. I want to use what I've got, definitely, this year. Sarah had goals to move more. She wants to work more colorwork sweaters, and she got sidelined with an injury for the knitting, but she might be finding some ways around that to craft, and so hopefully she'll be able to do that and her Wing It Cal project. She also has a lot of fabric. Her husband will have nice brand new shirts, and he'll wear out, make a hole in one arm. And then there's all this fabric on the shirt that's like new, and she was thinking of making some things, maybe project bags. So I'm excited to see what you come up with, Sarah. Katinka wants to curate her wardrobe. So get rid of everything she doesn't love, and then look at what's left, what's missing. And that will be what she focuses on making this year. And that's got to be difficult because Katinka is really skilled in sewing. I mean, she can make anything. Now, if you've seen her Instagram, it's Akhenatok Creation. She can creations. She can make any type of dress, formal wear. So it would be hard for me to stay on track if I knew the world was my oyster. I could do anything. But that's also smart. So let me show you where I'm at with my projects. I'll talk about my knitting goals. Last year I had set out a bunch of knitting goals, and I said it in the first episode, I did none of the projects I talked about. I finished the ones that I was working on in that episode, but I talked about the Herbawi shawl, the Sourcebook chunky cardigan, the Black Forest cardigan. I didn't do any of those. But I did the ones that I started, so that's something. I have no real goals knitting-wise this year, except I do want to use stash. I want to knit more socks. And here, I don't know if I showed these the last episode. I know, I still have a strand to weave in. These are my Michelle socks, and this is it. Now I know I've shown them, so I can wear them. This is in Julianne of Lovebird Lane Yarns Michelle colorway. And I just used a little contrasting, just leftover scrap yarn I had for the heels and toes. And I really love this colorway. It does look very me, and I like this height. This is a perfect height for a sock for me, wearing with Converse or something. So Julianne gifted me these. She didn't have to do that, this yarn. But I also wanted to support her shop, and I wanted her Molly colorway. So I bought that. That's based on Molly from a homespun house. It's a really sweet pink and cream stripe, self-striping colorway. It looks like colors Molly uses and wears. It's just also got a sweet feel to it, and Molly's family is just sweet. Her podcast and family just seem very sweet to me. So I just thought that was special, and I'm going to get started on that eventually. I mean, I'm working on some socks right now. I'd hoped to do for Christmas, but I just had too much going on. It's in some Jinx yarn. Oh, it's a mess now. It's the Gingerbread House colorway. Look at this, it's a wreck. Well, you can see the basic colors. It's a self-striping yarn. So I've started with my pink cuff. This is my contrast color for heels, toes, and cuff. And just I'm into the first stripe. That's it. That's all I've got to show. But it'll be fun to work on. And sad, a little sad that Laura's not dyeing anymore. That's probably the independent dyer I've bought from the most. She was the first dyer I ever bought from, hand dyer. I did not do a lot of my goals for last year. But I did several. Let me talk about the good ones, the ones I did first. That thing happened with bitterness. I learned Photoshop enough. I hate its guts, but I can do it. I wanted to do this podcast and kind of have a community. Like the chatting would take the place of when I chatted with my grandparents, even though I'm just talking to a camera. Maybe if you answered me back, it would feel like a conversation, and that actually happened. That was really great. And I learned how to do this. I learned how to upload stuff onto YouTube and edit and all that stuff. I got it together. I did want to organize my home. I had, that first episode, I was like walled in my furniture in a spare room. That's now my son's room. And that furniture has all been spread out where it belongs and fits around our house. And we've gotten rid of some things. So I did a lot of organizing. Not all of that, like deep cleaning wasn't one of my New Year's goals, but after reading The Year of Less in 2018, it definitely became my goal. So I did that, and I could stand to do it again, honestly. More paperwork and stuff is collected in places. I wanted to go to Iceland, and I did. I wanted to eat less sugar. That happened. Not the week that I was gone with my husband. I had a lot of cheesecake that week, but other than that, I have definitely had less sugar. I wanted to walk my dogs daily. I don't do it every single day, but I do it regularly. I wanted to recycle. I do that now. We don't use plastic unless we have to, so we have lots of glass and nowhere to recycle it from jars and things. We do refill jars, any jar we can, with honey when we sell our honey, but our beehive is gone now, so I don't know if we'll be doing bees for a while. When I make trips to visit family members, relatives, we like rattle. It's like ding, 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 ding the whole way, like 5-hour drive. And then we'll use their recycling centers and drop off a million bottles, or glass jars. But I'm doing it. Here's what I didn't get done. I didn't scan all the family photos. That didn't happen, but I've had computer issues, blog issues, so I think I did pretty good learning to do a podcast in that time and learning to use Photoshop. I didn't sew this year, but that's coming. I wanted to make up some designs of my own, maybe recreate some knitwear I saw on some old TV shows. I didn't do that. However, I have started that already in January. So, oh, and I wanted to read the sagas of the Icelanders, and I did do that, and it was great. So, for 2019, I want to let my stash fuel my winging it. I want to keep making up things. I'm going to show you my Wing It Cal project in a minute. I want to do more of that. And for odd bits of stash that, you know, it doesn't really work for this or that pattern that I have, but it doesn't, you know, work for anything else, I want to make up something for it to work. So maybe I'll make up some more things. I want to move my blog to a different platform, and that's probably going to happen in the next month or two. Be patient. If you can't leave comments, it's going to be fixed soon. I want to sew. I have to. I have to learn because I'm not wanting to buy from stores and I need stuff. So, you know, things, I need certain things you just got to do every once in a while. So you got to buy. I want to make those Christmas stockings using this for at least 2 of them, but I want them to be mix and match, but all kind of similar colors. I want to make some socks for family members. My husband's going to get a pair of socks or a sweater this year. I don't know which. He would like either, but he'd probably wear the socks the most. He's just got size 13 feet, so I'm kind of not looking forward to the super long. It needs to be fun yarn. I want to knit out of old pattern books. I don't worry about knitting the newest, hottest pattern, but I really like looking back at those books or magazines from way back. I want to always have socks in my bag with me, so I'm always accomplishing some sock knitting. It's really good for taking with you places. And I would like to work on my memory a little, improving it. I know there's apps to help you with that, but what I think I'm going to start memorizing like verses, and I think that will be good for me, putting good thoughts in my mind and also help me with my memory. So I'm excited to start that. I have already started that. So let's see, I think I've shown you everything, but the actual sweater I've been making. This is for the Wing It Cal, where it's a wing it knit along, where you just kind of wing it. And it could be something simple like, I want to practice stripes, so I'm going to make a dishcloth. And there you go. There's one of your projects done. You can enter it in the FO thread. There's going to be some prizes for this. I don't know what. I know I'm giving away a book, and I don't know what else. I mean, it's mostly about challenging ourselves and communicating while we do it. This isn't a super prize focused thing, but there will be some prize. I wanted a plaid sweater. I've wanted one for a long time, and I've eyed some. I showed you some in the last episode, and I've also had some in the Wing It Cal thread on my Ravelry group, which is my so-called Handmade Life Ravelry group. So anyway, I had this Briggs & Little heritage yarn. So I think it says worsted, but it's really more Aran weight. And this is probably going to have 10 inches of ease. So it's going to be a very oversized sweater. I just knew I wanted to do plaid, and I had a lot of that yarn. That's another affordable yarn line. I know in Canada it's a lot easier to find than here. But I don't even remember where I got it, but it was on sale and it was a good deal, like Wool of the Andes or Cascade. It was a good deal. I wanted a yarn that I could rip back if I mess up and not be worried about it looking crummy, and it is super hardy. It's taken the beating I've given it. So I have these 3 colors. I'm going to make a cropped version of this too, I think, using just different colors. I decided to make this long. I asked my daughter, should it be long or cropped? I kind of wanted cropped, but then I realized I have the most of this natural, so it needs to be the big sweater, the regular length sweater. if I make a brown one, this is kind of a brown and blue, it's got flecks of blue in it. It's actually got flecks of this color of blue in it, so they look really nice together. I'm going to make one, a cropped one, that's this as the main color, and the blue and cream are the contrast colors. So you can see my horizontal stripes, and you can see where my vertical stripes are going to go after I'm finished knitting the body. I've split for the sleeves here, and now I'm just knitting up to the neckline. I'm close to it. I'm close. And I'm just gonna wing it, see what happens with the neckline. I mean, I'm writing down what I'm doing, and I'm gonna try to come up with a pattern for it. But all the ideas of sizing, it's meant to be oversized and easy wearing. I'm a little intimidated by that. And you know, I really admire designers that have lots of sizes so everybody can find something if they want it. And then there's a part of me that thinks, what do you guys think? This is pretty chunky yarn. I mean, it's not chunky weight officially, but it's Aran. Do you think women will like wearing something this bulky with a pretty vibrant plaid on the front? I would, but I mean, I'm not like everybody else. I can sometimes do some funky things. So what do you guys think? And I just wondered if it would be even worth writing up as a pattern, because if I did, I would want to have lots of sizes for everyone. It's a fun project. When I wrote it, when I was deciding what I wanted to do, I did some swatches. And first I did like a buffalo plaid, and I like the way this looks, but with this worsted yarn, you can see my one little contrast stripe. I just put it there to see how they look together. It's very thick knit as a stranded color work. Like, it's just, that would be overwhelming in a warm climate. So I like this better because it's not ferile. And this is a very compressed version of how my plaid will look. It's actually a little more spread out in the sweater itself. But what do you guys think? Do you think, would you want to wear this, or is it just like, nah, that's a little too busy? Because if it's too busy, it's too busy. I like it. I made it for me, but I was thinking I've been writing down everything I'm doing, and I was thinking about making a pattern. I think I'll probably just do it because there's people out there in the world that are like me. So that's my project. You guys have been making a lot, and y'all are like, a lot of people are finished with things and starting on something new. Carmen was probably the first person to finish a FO for the knit along. She did a cowl for her daughter, and it's in a speckled yarn. It's got bright speckles in it, and it's called like My Birthday Cake Exploded. It's really sweet. She also is doing that Isabel Kramer pattern. I think it's called Gramps Revive. It looks like it's a really modern looking cardigan. It's cropped and maybe just has 2 buttons in it, kind of a deep wide V. It's really cute. She's knitting that out of yarn. She spun herself and dyed herself. Now I could be wrong, but Carmen, wasn't it 2018 your first year to knit a garment for yourself? I feel like you said it was. And I remember shortly after I met you through the YouTube comments on this podcast, and then later on Instagram, you like made up 2 sweaters just for yourself, like with no pattern. And then now you're dyeing and spinning and you're doing everything. That is so impressive, really encouraging. Makes me want to get in there and start knitting, you know, working on something. Cool. Frau K took a sweater she had already knit, which was the Birkin, and she steeked it down the front. That's something that Sarah Jane had done and kind of encouraged her, yes, you'll like it, do it. Because both of them said it just didn't fit well in the shoulders for them. They felt like it might be their gauge and being new to color work that made it not fit, not necessarily the pattern itself. So she did. She steeked the front of it, added a ribbed band with a I-cord bind off finish, and it looks great. And she's enjoying wearing it. So smart. And talk about winging it. Boy, that's like really taking off on a tangent and doing something to save a knit that you might otherwise just leave in a closet and never wear. Jen made a shawl from, she'd said she had some yarn that was kind of special to her, and she hadn't yet found the pattern that was right for it, so maybe she would just make something up, and that's what she did. She knit a very simple pattern with a little bit of lace eyelets and picot edging. The yarn totally shines because it's a very, very simple triangular shawl. It's really beautiful. Good job, Jen. Sarah is planning a Lord of the Rings themed blanket, so squares. She's charting out squares and has drafted a chart that's Lord of the Rings themed, at least one chart, and she put it in our whip thread, and oh, it's going to be really cool. I'm so excited to see this grow over the year. Claudia did, she's calling it the Norwegian dog slouchy beanie. It was a hat, and she altered the color work a little to make it look like her dog's. But then after knitting both hats, and they were really cute, one just felt a little too slouchy and big. She didn't like the decreases at the top. So she just felt like the whole hat was too big. So she pulled the top back and then made the whole thing, like just made a border, bound off, and made it a cowl. So then she knit another hat. So she's got two hats and a matching cowl. Hopefully I had time to put pictures in here for you to see. Really cute and very ingenious way to handle a problem. Again, with your knitting, that's the thing. We've got all these skills. Most of us have been knitting for a while now. We have all these skills, and yet we still let a pattern hold our hand. We don't try things on our own. That's really what I wanted to try and push myself to do this year, and you guys are doing it too. Adina, she knit some socks. She just grabbed some yarn and went to work as a sub one day, and didn't have a pattern, so she just started kind of winging a simple pattern and loved the fact. So she's knit a second pair of socks like that, calls them her subbing socks. On top of that, she considered this a project because she had different stash yarns that she wouldn't normally pair these colors together, but she tried them for the Tresta sweater by Jennifer Steingass, and they actually look great together. I wouldn't have thought of putting those colors together, but they have a very vintage look to me. I guess because they're so high contrast. It's really nice, Adina. It came out great. Sarah was making a poncho, adding a cable or lace pattern. It was going to be for her daughter. She got sidelined with injury, but we'll see if she finds a way to do something else instead. She's actually winging it in a big way because she's learning crochet to do with her left hand so that she can continue crafting right now while her injury heals. That's so smart. So really, Sarah, you can just enter anything into this. Cal, you can make a one crochet dishcloth, and there you go. You've been winging it completely. Pam has started some mitts, and she's using the alternate stitch dictionary, and it's really neat. It's kind of a geometric print. It's nice. It's ferile, and I was thinking, she was talking with someone else in our group about the space, like in the gloves, the fingers. Will they fit with those floats and things? And I've never done ferile mittens or gloves. I've never actually made gloves at all. So I'm interested to see how these come out. And that might be a thing I could do in the future to challenge myself. That's something new. It's kind of neat when you try something new after years of doing a craft, I told you about Kathy designing her own sweater. I'll have pictures of her yarn and her planning books. She's using Knitting Without Tears and Knitting in the Old Way as inspiration for her design. Sarah Jane knit Cartography by Tin Can Knits, but she knit it cropped, and that was her modification for that one. Now she's working on a sweater in yarn that she dyed herself with avocado, and it's really a beautiful, subtle pink. I can't wait to see how that comes out. Ada's doing a colorwork vest, and she is like a colorwork queen. She is so good at designing vests and sweaters and things with colorwork, and then just knitting colorwork. She's got a low contrast colorwork pattern, but then a bright ribbed band at the bottom, and I think that looks really good. I had a hard time the first time I did something kind of low contrast, and now I just love that effect. I love it. And so I'm really excited to see what you come up with, Ada. And you've seen my my plaid sweater. So guys, here's my question. Would you wear a Aran weight plaid, all over plaid sweater that was oversized? Would you wear something like this? Is it worth making a pattern for something like this? Would people want to knit it? Because it's kind of a lot of work while you're moving your blog to do that. And I don't know if I want to worry about doing it if, you know, I'm the only person in the world who wants that. And I guess the other thing I'd like to ask is, especially if you don't live in the States, what are some affordable, super bulky yarns that you use? And what are the things you like to knit or want to knit with super bulky? So just let me know. I hope everyone has a really great week. And I plan to be back at this weekly again. I keep saying that, but I will be. So, bye.